Tricia, it's 6:32. Why don't you unmute and are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. I don't see Ben Kalos here.
But I see Abby is here.
Great. Abby, do you have an ETA on the council member?
He is joining right now. He's just logging on.
Perfect. So Barry, do you want to just give a little introduction?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Barry Schneider, co-chair of the Parks Committee of Community Board 8. This is our July meeting. Welcome aboard. We have an it's a simple agenda, but it's very packed with stuff. And we appreciate your joining us via Zoom. We'll get started in a moment, just very quickly. This first item, the discussion of the Rupert Park, the current state, and look into the future. We're going to limit that discussion to 45 minutes. We have two guests with us. We have the Honorable Ben Kalos, New York City Council member, and we'll be joined, if we have not already been joined, by the Manhattan Borough Commissioner of Parks, William Castro. Without further ado, I'm turning over to my co-chair, Tricia Shimamura, who will conduct this portion of the meeting. Tricia.
Really, we just wanted to kick it off and thank Councilmember Kalos for joining us and invite him to give a few opening remarks. Councilmember, just to give you a little bit of backstory, which I think you already know, but of course, we are all very concerned about open space, and we're so proud that you have helped champion this issue during your tenure in the City Council. We particularly were talking about Rupert Park and the future of this park, funding, what we need to do in terms of advocacy on our end to ensure that there's money in the budget to go to a redesign of Rupert. And over again, we kind of just said, well, we should bring Councilmember Kalos in to talk about this and to talk about the ideas that he might have with regards to this. But really, we'd love to just get your thoughts on all the parks in our community. And then if you could give some kind of specific thoughts on Rupert, I think that's where we're going to naturally transition to afterwards.
Great.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. And I see a lot of friendly faces here. I want to thank the folks from Parks. I see Mark Vaccaro, who is here. I know that we'll be joined soon by more folks. I also see Mubin from the Muslim Volunteers. One of the commitments I made when I got elected is I wanted to start a neighborhood association or conservancy or partnership for every park. And Muslim Volunteers has been an amazing partner for Rupert, which has been hard to get, had been hard to get off the ground historically. I also want to acknowledge that I see Rita Popper on this committee. Rita, I was known as a troublemaker on Community Board 8 until Rita joined, and now she's the troublemaker, and I love her for it. And she is the, Rita, you are still president of the Knickerbocker TA Tenants Association? Yes, and so we worked together to make sure that 91st was designated a play street by the Department of Transportation, and she is pretty much, her and David Rosenstein, who I miss terribly, and I know many of you do, work together with Lisa LaChola to make that play street. And so Rupert has been a park that has needed a lot of work. I actually brought the previous parks chair, Barry Gudenchik, to that park to show him, and he said it was one of the parks that needed some of the most work. And this isn't actually the Parks Department's fault. This is actually HUD's problem. And that's because Rupert Yorkville and I actually live in the complex. That's what you see outside the window. I live in one of the rentals in the building. When they put up the building, long before I was alive, so I can't be blamed for this one, it was under HUD, and they had to do a park as part of their urban renewal project. And that park is a HUD designed park, not a city parks designed park, which is why there are so very many large trees that eat up all the sunlight in the park. So I just want to touch base on a little bit of some of the partnership we've been able to do. It was this Parks Committee that we worked with the previous chairs to open the oval. It was previously only available 3 months a year as kind of a dirt field. Now it is available half the year for free tennis, and then there's still free hours throughout the year. That wouldn't have happened without this committee. Starting from 60th Street South, we've already broken ground on a $100 million extension of the Esplanade down to 52nd Street. Many of you joined us to break ground on $3.3 million to rebuild Carl Schurz Park Playground, which I am hoping, and I'm hoping we can get an update, but I'm hoping we can have it open in September because the kids will need it. Moving northerly, we have John Jay Park, where we've been able to secure funding with the parks and where we've opened completely new basketball courts, working with Greg Davis and the kids there. And then we also recently, this is outside the district, but we reopened the Sutton Place Park with the Sutton Place Conservancy. And then along the Esplanade, which is kind of the pride and joy, and this really has to do more with Congressmember Carol Maloney, who co-chairs the task force with me, and Jessica Lappin, who founded the task force. We're now up to 198, I think it's actually $278 million. And that's $4.6 million to rebuild Andrew Housewell Green under Alice Aycock sculpture, which we all cut the ribbon on, $29 million from Memorial Sloan Kettering, which I believe the Schneiders were key in securing for phase 2B from 60th to 61st, where I believe we've already begun construction. $15 million from Rockefeller University that's already done, which we cut the ribbon on. I've allocated $1.25 million from 70th to 68th to redo that portion. I know the mayor has matched my dollars with another $1 million, and we're hoping to get that underway. HSS has already renovated from 70th to 72nd to the tune of $1 million, and we will see them redo from 70th Street all the way up to 78th Street as part of a master plan that we all negotiated with them during my first year in office. $15 million rebuilt the stairwell from 78th to 81st Street. We have a new pier coming from Brearley. That's the overhang for the $1 million. I allocated $500,000 with Civitas to redo from 81st to 84th. We just reopened a new ADA ramp at, I believe, 82nd Street. I mentioned the Carl Schurz Playground. And then from 90th Street to 88th Street, one of the first money I ever secured, $35 million in my first 3 months in office, went to that. And that is actually already open. We are waiting to cut that ribbon when we can. We opened the 90th Street Pier as a park before the ferry service came, and now we have the ferry service. And as we move from 90th to 96th Street, there's $1 million. I've been cooking dinner, so I'm going to step out for 1 second, and I'm going to just take my chicken off the grill and hand it over to my wife and daughter to eat, and then I'll be right back to talk about Rupert.
Okay.
Well, I must comment on the council member's haircut. Good for him. I also want to
Oh, we
welcome.
need to unmute him.
You know, I also want to mention the chairman of Community Board 8, Alita Camp, has joined us. Alita, welcome. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tricia.
Thank you, and thank you to the co-chairs of the Parks Committee. And so some of the money that we still have is we have John Jay Park, a senior space that this committee did a lot of the public hearings on, that we need to move forward with. And so for Rupert Park, we had initially allocated about $100,000 for the irrigation. That turned out not to be enough. Rita Popper has been very vehement in her advocacy and wanted to make sure that there was at least $500,000 allocated. So I'll tell you that in this past budget, I have allocated at least $500,000 for Rupert Park. And so I am interested in hearing, and I have about 10-15 minutes before I have to hop to my next thing. I hear another baby. My baby is going to bed as we speak.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's the new normal, and it's my life too. What I would say is one question that we've had, and I would like to say that this should be off topic, because I know that one of the co-chairs has devoted at least 1 or 2 meetings on this, is whether a dog run would be appropriate for Rupert, given how many people bring their dogs there naturally. I will let Parks speak to it, but I do know that David Rosenstein and other neighbors who are nearby would mention that there were a lot of dogs barking, and historically, as far as I know, at least in our neighborhood, a lot of the dog runs are not where people live. So we have one in Carlshires Park, we have one in the 60s on the Esplanade next to the FDR, so that we don't have to deal with noise issues or any smells or what have you. So I think there's that one conflict. The other issue is when I was on Community Board 8 back in the aughts, as it were, and I'm sure Barry and Judy may remember this along with a lot of the other people who were on the board with me. I remember we did we had one dog run in Carlshires Park, and people were up in arms that there was only one dog run. So I believe we ended up having to create a second dog run. I believe it was in Carlshires Park. I don't remember, or maybe it was in the 60s. But I remember we ended up needing to create 2 dog runs. And we have the similar complaint down in the 60s. So if we ended up doing 1 dog run, we would need to have a big dog run and a small dog run. And at that point, we might not have much park left. I'm a big believer in infrastructure can determine human behavior. So are there ways to change things in the park? Are there ways to make it more approachable? I know that I think in 2015, Mark Vaccaro, there was funding available to make parks more accessible. So the idea was to take down the fences and the gates. And I think the board had been opposed to taking down the fences and the gates because there may already be an individual who sleeps in the park at night, and we didn't want to make it easier for people to just come in. But one question is, like, how do we have a park that people aren't sleeping in at night, but is still approachable and not necessarily just through those gates? So are there things we can do? Do we want more green space? Do we want less green space? Do we want more seating areas? Do we want to set up, instead of having the hill, as it were, having a lower level and an upper level with the youth programming up top and the passive space down below? But I'm hoping that with at least $500,000, and I see Sahar, another member of the Muslim Volunteers, who I want to recognize, they are there. They bring hundreds of people to try to improve the park. And I'll just say, the other big challenge we have is just, no matter how much amazing work the Muslim Volunteers do in terms of the plantings, we end up having all of it get torn up very, very soon thereafter by folks who are not being good neighbors and are letting their dogs off the leash, and then the dogs are ripping things up. So I live near Rupert Park. It is the park that my daughter and I use, and I'd like to do something there. It is one of the last things I'd like to get done as your council member. I hope I can continue to do it. And I think that the $500,000 is a starting point, and I hope to have more to announce in the very immediate future.
Thank you so much, council member. And I know that you have just a short amount of time, so I think we should just go straight into questions and go with the public first. I think that Betty Cooper Wallerstein, I'm not sure, Betty, if you have a question on this or on another park, but Will, can you unmute?
I'm here and I'm ready with my question. Thank you so much. Hello?
Yes,
Yep,
Betty.
you're good.
Okay, well, it's over 8 years now, as you know, Ben, that we have John Jay Park, the one section. It's actually a playground, and we were expecting to fix a section so people could sit down there. I'm going to go to the last meeting that we had, was with Commissioner Silver's office, where we were getting the go-ahead. And not only did you put aside money, Ben, but also we had funding from the commissioner for the tree guards. So now what has happened since just yesterday, a call to Steve Simon told us that this is still on hold. What is happening?
So we, in preparation for tonight, and also I just want anyone here to know that Betty Cooper Wallerstein is a force of nature, and she will not stop and won't give up till she wins.
I would hope not.
What the community needs. So we just in response to Betty's advocacy, we had reached out to the Parks Department to get a status of all of the projects that we are currently working on, and we do have quite a lot. And so Two of the projects, so anything in construction is continuing. So Carl Schurz Park Playground is continuing, but the John Jay Park seating area and even the East River Esplanade project that I funded with the mayor have been, a contractor is close to being selected. They're ready to do the contract award, but the city has placed a hold on any of these new construction projects. So in response to Betty's advocacy, and we reached out, we have the meeting with Parks yesterday. We're very honest and helpful about where things are, and that is being held up by the Office of Management and Budget. So I actually reached out to the Office of Management and Budget yesterday, requesting that these projects be taken off the hold, because this is not mayoral money, this is council money. There's a little bit of matching here, but they have no right to stall these projects. So
But the other thing is the taking away the exercise equipment. That has nothing to do with construction or deconstruction. That's still there. So we really have to talk about it, Ben, because this is not fair to the community. The 3 seniors, 2 of whom were on Board 8, who asked for it so badly and needed it 8 years ago, have passed away. And we have so many people who, I'm sorry, I was just trying to get something to eat too. We have so many people who cannot walk over to Carl Schurz, and it really is in terrible shape, but at least the equipment should be removed. And I'll speak with you in the office further on this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
I see a lot of board members, but I also see, I got a message that Jennifer Ratner has asked to ask questions, who's of course our chair of and founder of the East River Friends of the East River Esplanade. So we'll let Jennifer be unmuted. Will?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Thanks so much. So thanks everyone. I know this was also not on the agenda, but Councilmember Kalos addressed the Esplanade a lot. So thank you, and thank you for all of the amazing funding. I just want to address some kind of immediate issues, and I see Mark Vaccaro is on the call, and we brought them up with Wesley. But there has been a lot of vandalism in the southern part of the Esplanade that we've gotten some reports of, beer bottles that our volunteers have cleaned up. And so we were just hoping that there could be a little more attention to that area, since more and more people are using it, since there's such a dearth of public space in the area, and the waterfront is so beautiful at this time of year. That's one thing. Number 2, you're talking about exercise equipment in John Jay, and one of our next projects, because we've gotten a lot of requests for it, is to put exercise equipment in some form on some part of the Esplanade, since now that people will be exercising outdoors more. So Mark, that's just something maybe you could address, because I know there's certain parts of the Esplanade further south where there's parked Esplanade equipment there. Parked exercise equipment on the waterfront. I don't know if Mark is unmuted.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can we unmute Mark as well, just in case he wants to comment on that?
Yes, there's exercise equipment farther south. I'm not including East River Park, because that's a whole different ballgame. But on the Esplanade between Montgomery Street and Brooklyn Bridge, there's a contingent of fairly similar, some equipment similar to what's at John Jay. There's a lot of body weight equipment, and then there are a few of the equipments where you have moving parts on. And that particular section of exercise equipment is actually fairly heavily used by people of all ages, and it's a mixed community down there, so it's racially and age mixed, and it's heavily used. The equipment at John Jay is moderately used. It's usually more the body weight equipment at the southern end of the exercise area that I generally speaking, when I go there, I see somebody working out or a personal trainer working with somebody in that area. But there is that exercise equipment is used. Yep.
Great.
I believe Commissioner Castro is actually on the phone, so I think I just unmuted him. Commissioner, is that you?
Yeah, thank you. The limits of technology are becoming amazingly apparent to me over the last month. Sorry to interrupt. Mark did a fine job, so I don't need to elaborate, but I just wanted to let you know I've been on for the last 15, 20 minutes.
I just want to answer the question about the vandalism. One of my neighbors sent it to me. My staff has probably let the Parks Department know about it, as well as the appropriate agencies. In terms of the vandalism, we'll work with Department of Sanitation to try to clean that up. So one of the reasons that it's important to have conservancies or friends of or neighbors groups is so that there is somebody paying attention to that. So Jennifer, if you folks can make sure you get the 301 requests in, let me know, let the Parks Department know. We'll work with sanitation and others. Something that you may have read about in the city and that I tweeted about today is that one of the reasons I voted no is because they've been cutting random things that we didn't want them to cut. So as you may have read, we have park rangers and PEP officers, and PEP officers are the people who do things when people are setting off fireworks in our parks and things like that, because we don't need police officers to do that work. We can have our PEP officers who make a fraction of that cost doing it. And so we haven't laid off any police officers or done anything to police officers, but they've just laid off 50 PEP and park rangers. Is that correct? And they may not be allowed to
correct.
comment. Okay.
Not yet.
But so we will work with you to do so. And I'm just very, very disappointed in this year's budget.
We have another question from another member of the public. So apologies, board members. I just want to get them first. Mubin Siddiqui had a question. So Will, if you could unmute Mubin.
Vivian?
Hi. Hi, Barry and Tricia. Thank you for making this time for Rupert Park in particular. I'm so glad that you brought all the players in question in one forum. So hi, Ben. Hi, Commissioner Castro. Wonderful to hear from you after some time. I just want to first thank both of you and CB8 so much tremendously for supporting Rupert Park. We're a volunteer group that serves as stewards of the park, and we're very grateful for this collective support we get from Commissioner Castro, and Ben in particular has been giving us monetary support from the very outset, and CB8 has been incredibly supportive. One of the concerns I do have, we've talked about a lot of the issues that were aired at today's meeting over the years, and we would really encourage everyone, granted it's COVID environment, but we can have a Zoom call, but I think all the players need to sit down and actually hammer out future renovations, improvements to the park, because we've done the best we can under the circumstances. We are doing the landscaping, whatever we can to make the place more appealing to the neighborhood and the community. And we've also been trying to police as best as we can. Neighbors have been incredibly supportive and notifying us from time to time that people are cutting the plants that we've just planted, or as the plants are blooming, someone is coming and chopping down the plants. And we have notified New York City Parks, usually Wes or somebody there immediately. But I think we need to take it to the next stage, as Ben said. And while we appreciate the funding that he's providing, we're really grateful for it, and thank you so much for that, Ben. But we need the players to be now sitting in engagement together in a sort of consolidated fashion, for us to just go and meet either Ben or CB8 or New York City Parks discreetly. I think we will not get the synergy and the momentum to make the next change. So I think we've taken it as far as we can in terms of just general sort of maintenance, but we need to make certain more long-lasting improvements for the benefit of the community.
May I jump in here, Mubin? When we coalesce the discussion we have now, I have a very specific suggestion to make regarding moving forward with Rupert Park into the future, as has been done with the park here in Community District 8 early on. But let's hear the rest of the comments. I want to hear from Craig from the public, and then we'll go to the board members.
Oh, and Barry, I'm sorry, just to make mention, Will had asked me to say that if you have a question and it's not going to do anything to chat, Will, you must raise your hand, which is a little blue button with a blue hand under participants, in order to ask a question. So yes to Craig, and then we can move on.
Thank you.
Do you want me to respond?
That would be great, Commissioner. Thank you.
I just quickly want to say, I want to thank everybody who have done work volunteering, and it's been a great effort. The volunteer projects that we've had there, and the community who are interested in keeping it a beautiful park and making it better. The use of the northeast corner of the dog run is not really working out very well, and has been a problem for a number of years. One of the suggestions that I received in a letter is an excellent one, which is to add more plantings in the park. And I think that's an immediate thing that we can do, in September when the weather is cooler, because we're in for a pretty hot summer, it seems like, for the next few weeks at least. So I think we need to do that. As has been pointed out, the southeast corner is in pretty good shape with the plantings, but the area chosen for dogs is really not. In some of the other areas, because of the unusual nature of this park, it really is not the best ground to put a park in of this kind because of the slope. Causes erosion, as I'm sure most people know. But I think that's the initial thing that we should do this September, is do a major planting throughout the park. And then I'll work with the councilmen, as we have in the past, to see how we can do any capital renovations. Capital renovations are increasingly expensive. It's really a challenge for us to do the kinds of work we'd like to do, given the budget limitations and the increasing costs. But we'll figure something out, but we can definitely make it a beautiful park again. And secondly, the Park Enforcement Patrol has gone in there with ticketing, but we'll have to go in there with education as well as ticketing if that's necessary. We try not to do that. And then we'll have to go in the early mornings and in the evenings, as everyone knows how that works, and we'll stay on it. So thank you.
I just want to add, one person who is missing is my good friend, and everyone's good friend because everyone has her mobile number, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. Council members have a very limited amount of capital compared to what a borough president has. So if we want to see some of the big changes, I think parks, for the kinds of changes, for small changes, we're talking hundreds of thousands to millions. For the big kinds of changes that I think the park actually needs in terms of the major overhaul, where I believe Parks is saying 6 to 8 million. Is that correct?
Yes, that is.
So that doesn't happen without money from the borough president and even perhaps the mayor's office. So we will need to widen it, because I'm happy to put in my couple of 100,000 here and there, and maybe $1 million if I can. But if we need $6 to $8 million, that is how much a council member gets over 2 years, not over 1 year.
That is incredibly helpful to know. And I guess, Councilmember, just because I know you have limited time, and I just wanted to follow up with that. What can we do then as a board? I mean, should we be starting now to gather petitions? Should we be starting now to be writing letters to the mayor's office? What can we be doing to really start advocating hard for those larger funds?
Ben, if I may jump in here, that's the point I was about to get. When we finally resolve some of the issues we're discussing, back in the aughts, where the councilman was talking about, the community board got together and formed a 197A plan, which told the city how we wanted to use the various areas. One of the areas was Andrew Haswell Green Park. The community board then set out to raise funds. We got money from each council member. We got money from the borough president, from the state assemblyman, from the state senator, Carolyn Maloney. We were able to get federal funding in that park. I don't know that federal funding would be appropriate for the park we're talking about, Rupert Park, now, because that was multimodal money. But in any event, the point is we have to organize ourselves and get moving toward a concentrated effort to raise the $6 to $8 million from the various stakeholders whom we can call upon to fund this the way we did Andrew Haswell Green 10 or 12 years ago. And the money, by the way, the money doesn't come to the community board. We decided that was a bad idea. The money went to the Parks Department through a conduit, and it worked perfectly well.
I think Barry is right, and I think that if the community board can start the campaign now, I don't necessarily think you need petitions so much as resolutions, bringing other elected officials to this forum, and Rupert is lucky because it's on the press. It is in Dan Quart's district. It is across the street from Rebecca Seawright's office. It is my district, but Keith Powers starts at Lexington, which is a block or two away. We have our borough president. It is correct. The East River Esplanade Park, Andrew Haswell Green, was on the highway, so it was technically multimodal money. And actually, I was working for Assemblyman Bing when he allocated $300,000 to Andrew Haswell Green Park Phase 2A. So I remember it fondly. So I think that if the assembly members each did $500,000, I could probably do another $1 million. And if the borough president kicked in $1 million, now we're talking about $3 or $4 million, and then we're cooking with gas. Also, the mayor had given money, about $1 million, to 24 Sycamores Park. He's put in money on the Esplanade, so it is possible that if we advocate with the mayor. So I think as we move forward, it might be appropriate to bring Gail Brewer, if you invite her. I know she shows up. The assembly members, Liz Kruger, the state senator, all these different elected officials, to let folks know that this is a park that is a priority. And then just one other park that I don't want to get lost is the park at Stanley Isaacs at 96th Street, and trying to put pressure on the group of folks who do the roller hockey there to provide capital improvements to the rest of the park. I know that they receive a huge cost savings by able to use that park, I think almost at very low fee or no fee. We have that. We also have Samuel Seabury Playground. I think Samuel Seabury Playground is actually in much better condition than the other two. But I would just say Rupert and Stanley Isaacs Playground need the attention. And I think fighting for the money, and then also just trying to figure out the future of the park. I would hate to get the $6 to $8 million and then end up getting caught in the middle of the dog run, big dog, small dog, what have you. So trying to get that settled up front of like, this is going to be a park, this is going to be what it does, or it's going to be an entirely dog park and what have you, but trying to figure out what that's going to look like so that it comes from the community versus the elected officials. And then other key features. So yeah, happy to work with you. I see a lot of folks on the call. Abby Dempsey from my office is here. She'll take notes and continue to listen. I have to hop, but thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ben. Greatly appreciate you being here and your inspiration. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm sorry, the council member had to jump off, but Craig, I think that you were next with a question.
Will you unmute Craig, please?
Craig, you may have to push a button on your screen.
Yeah,
There you go.
thank you. Unfortunately, Councilman Kalos left after I wanted to address the issue that I thought was really important. And I know, Tricia, you've been to the John Jay Park numerous times, as we discussed previously, but I think it's very irresponsible to go ahead and remove the equipment at John Jay Park, considering all the gyms are closed. The area where the equipments are constantly filled. First of all, there's numerous personal trainers there. And I asked to have this looked into previously. I never received an answer from Steve Simon. Some of them hang banners up as to brand themselves and hold classes at John Jay Park, which is ludicrous because people who, regular members of the community, can't use this facility, and people are making money while there are people who are laid off in the community. I just think it's really unfair. And there's no room for people to exercise. And honestly, I'm not sure when the gyms are opening and when people are going back. So I think that there needs to be a little bit of common sense here and not cutting off our nose to spite our face. I understand how the vote went previously. And I understand that Ben wants to get this accomplished, but I mean, I think you just need to go there and see what's happening. And Trish, like I said, you've been there, so I understand. And another point, Mark, I didn't really understand what you were talking about adding new equipment versus the equipment all the way downtown. If you could just reiterate that.
Downtown has a broader selection. It's a large area. So there's a much broader selection of different types of exercise equipment and equipment that's, equipment is usually designated by age, but down there it seems everything is being used by everybody. And I don't see a lot of, I'm not down there that section a huge amount, but I don't see a lot of personal trainers down there. I do see them up on and off at John Jay and some of my other parks.
Yeah, in the morning, there's 3 or 4 every morning. I'm probably the person that you see there every day, by the way. So please come say hi. But I don't understand, like I'm familiar with some of the equipment that I've seen around other parks in the city. And actually the equipment that it wants to be removed, not the pull-up bars or the jungle gym or monkey bars, excuse me. I mean, those are excellent pieces of equipment, but the other equipment that was put in that had lots of moving parts are not useful pieces of equipment. They're easy to break, which is really what happened. But I have seen other equipment in other parks in the city that are very functional. So you were talking, it sounded like there was the possibility of adding additional equipment on the Esplanade further down, but no one from the Upper East Side is going all the way down to Chinatown at the Lower East Side to go exercise.
No, I wasn't saying adding equipment. I was just describing what's down there. That's all.
Oh, okay. So is that something that's a possibility? And because at this time, the park, honestly, if you go there after work at 4 or 5 o'clock, it's very crowded. At 7, 8, 9 o'clock, it's very crowded also. And those pads where the equipment is being removed for the new benches, those are used every morning. All of them are completely full for exercise.
All right, Martin, let's handle this, please, and then we'll have to move on.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be my decision or design to add or take equipment. I'm operations.
Well, you're doing a great job because they're doing a good job opening the park this year. So congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna, sorry, everybody on my end. I think that the next person who had their hand raised was Justin.
Hi, how's it going? Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm a resident of the neighborhood. I'm on 79th Street. I grew up in this neighborhood. Grew up in John Jay Park. Went to PS 158 with my wife. So now our 2-year-old frequents the park, and it's been great that the park was opened for the neighborhood and the children in the neighborhood during these crazy times. So I just kind of like to reiterate, I was Craig's sentiment. He invited me here, so thanks for that, Craig. The fitness equipment in John Jay Park is heavily used pretty much all times of the day. Some of the fitness equipment was actually installed incorrectly in the area that is designated for exercise. There was a set of parallel bars that were actually, instead of installed parallel to one another, they were installed head on. So I'm of the mind that specific area could definitely use some sort of improvement. As for the rest of the seating areas that they're trying to install, the entire back area is a seating area. There's like maybe 30 square feet of area to exercise on. So those are just my thoughts on that. Another issue that I was hoping to express while Mr. Callis was here was that of the John Jay Park swimming pool. Me and some 500 other local residents have signed a petition, which was, I'm assuming, brought to Mr. Callis's office yesterday to petition to open up the swimming pool. It's been a mainstay of the neighborhood. I think it's absolutely crazy to not open the swimming pool. The children really deserve and need it opened. That's another issue. And lastly, I'd like to address the issues with dog walking in John Jay Park. I know it's been mentioned as an issue in Rupert Park, but it's also a concern to many parents in John Jay Park. There's a cabal of dog walkers who like to bring their dogs into the kiddie playground and also on the ball court area, which some years ago recently was renovated. I forget, large sums of money went into improving the basketball courts there. And every day in the mornings and in evenings, you have dog walkers bringing their dogs onto the basketball court area to do their business. And it's really unsanitary. And I've spoken with some Parks Department officials. There apparently is misleading signs about whether or not dog walking is allowed in the park. I think technically dogs aren't allowed in John Jay Park because there's playground equipment in all areas of the park, which I think by rule, you're not allowed to have dogs walking in areas with playground equipment. So that was one issue I spoke to a Parks Department official about, and he said they were going to update the signs. And since there's been no update, there's no sign whatsoever about the areas where dogs can and cannot go.
All right, Justin, I'm going to have to call you, cut you off. Number two, good. Mark has heard about the signs, and regarding the swimming pool, we're going to be discussing. We're going to pick that up under new business. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Sahar is next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And Councilmember Ben Kellos, he left. I just wanted to thank him as well for his, such wonderful words that he said about Rupert Park and Muslim Volunteers for New York's work. I just wanted to add a couple of things, just wanted to mention about that, we did have a virtual event, although we couldn't have any physical events at Rupert Park, but just to engage the neighbors and to offer more opportunities. We did do a virtual Earth Day event a few weeks back, and Barry was also registered for that. So it was really nice to see many on that. So we are still trying, although given that the park was closed off, to continue some of the activities related to parks. So just to keep that interest going, now that the parks are they've opened up, hopefully by October is our next event on the calendar. And hopefully by then, situation would have changed and we would be able to bring in and invite everyone to come and, clean the park and also to plant new buds for the next season. So just wanted to update on that we already have plans for that, obviously tentative and dependent on the COVID-19 situation and, the advice that we would receive from the parks and everyone else. The other thing I really wanted to mention was that I was just so excited to hear about when Barry said, Tricia spoke up, Commissioner Castro spoke, and also, Ben was mentioning about the fact that for Rupert Park next, we would be engaging in some bigger projects and to really try to revamp it. That has been, so close to our heart as well. And I think that's what Mubin was also mentioning. And I want to just kind of reemphasize that as well, that we would definitely love to be a part of that, be a big role in that, in engaging the community, in helping in many ways. So thank you. Let's definitely get together for a meeting on this and let's really work on this. There's so many things that can be done and the park can be made so useful and much more beautiful.
Thank you, Zahar.
Thanks, Sahar. I think that just so we're all on the same page, this was still under the larger umbrella of asking questions to both Commissioner Castro and to Ben Kellos. So we'll continue with this, but then we'll go, I think I want to just circle back at the end to what Barry had said that we would circle back to about Rupert Park. So stay tuned, don't leave Sahar and Mubin because I want you guys to be a part of that at the end. But since this was technically questions that people had raised their hands with regards to kind of the broader scope of parks, I think we can continue. Jennifer Ratner was next.
May I ask you to keep your remarks to 2 minutes, please? We're going to be running into a time crunch. Thank you.
It's Jennifer Ratner again from Friends of the East River Esplanade. So just responding to the subsequent comments about exercise equipment, and just because Parks is on the line, I just wanted to reiterate that we have had a lot of requests at Esplanade Friends to put exercise equipment on the waterfront because, again, people can't exercise indoors. So if you do end up taking the equipment out of John Jay Park, I am suggesting that it should be moved, or at least some of it could be moved to areas on the Esplanade. And it's really unfair to the communities in East Harlem and the Upper East Side, which are very mixed communities and very heavily used, I would argue, as much or more so than further south, that there's no exercise equipment for, literally miles and miles and miles. So I don't think it's not really a big issue of design. There are lots of waterfronts where there's small little areas where people can do chin-ups or whatever they want to do, pull-ups. And it would, be a great location for people to use that kind of exercise equipment. And we'd certainly be able to help coordinate that.
I am not speaking as co-chair, but as just an Esplanade user. Jennifer, I think it sounds like a great idea. I think it sounds wonderful. And would, I think, draw more people to the Esplanade. I was wondering if Commissioner Castro could, or Mark could speak about the possibility. I don't know what, forgive me, it's been a while. I can't remember what exercise equipment was being removed from John Jay. Forgive me, but I am wondering about the possibility of if anything does get moved or whatever does get moved, if that can be reutilized in our community on the Esplanade.
This is Bill. Well, we could certainly look at this if you want to suggest some locations, and then we'll also take a look to see whether this can work or not, and I'd be happy to look into it.
That's great.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll give you a call or send an email to your office. That's okay.
Very good.
And Jennifer, if you could just keep us posted if there's anything that our committee can do to support you, we want to. So just let us know.
That'd be great. Thanks.
The final member of the public who has asked to speak is Betty again. Go ahead, Betty.
Hi, I'm usually very quick. I came back because I hear that Commissioner Castro's there, and I have a question, and then I want to answer a question that was raised by someone. Commissioner, I do remember that the Esplanade was one of the places that we did talk about that might take the equipment. But what I wanted to ask you is, everyone is complaining about the conditions that you heard just a while ago in John Jay with the dog feces and with all the money and the wonderful things that were done for the other parts of the children's unit and the basketball courts. Why is the park not getting enough help with keeping it clean?
The problem is that I'll answer it in two ways. First of all, there's been a tremendous budget reduction, which I think everyone is aware of. The city has taken a big hit, as I think everybody understands, just as the public has taken a big hit because of the coronavirus, with businesses closed and tax revenue down dramatically, something we've never seen in this country since the Great Depression. So that has factored into this. We had our seasonal budget significantly cut this year. So we have about over 250, I think about 250 fewer people working at this time this summer than we had last year. Don't hold me to that number, but that's roughly what it is. But so that, and other people who we usually have available have not been reporting in as much as we would like. And then there are some real legitimate concerns of people who have health conditions, who have difficulty coming in and need to stay home. It's very important that they take care of themselves. So that's the main reason. Now, the second part of this, my answer is that I've spoken with our regional managers, and Mark Vaccaro is one of them, and a very good one. And I've asked them to look at locations where we are having problems because of use, primarily for litter, where we found this to be true at Carl Schurz Park and other parks throughout the borough, where people go out because they're going nuts inside, and that makes sense. They want to get out. They need to get out. It's very important for their mental health and physical health. And what this has done is it's started to have an impact on your local parks. Whether it's grass areas have become worn as a result of this. Other things that you're seeing, people using them in ways that they hadn't been, as one gentleman said earlier this evening, or it's been an increase in some of the uses. All of these things increase litter, et cetera. Even with the subways closing early for cleaning, it's made it harder for us to lock parks at night because our staff has to get home and they need to leave earlier than they ordinarily would. They usually work fairly late. But I've talked to our staff and I've said, look, find the locations that seem to be problematic. And let's do a number of things to address that, because I want the public to be well served and I want their parks to be clean and well maintained, even though we have several hundred fewer people. There is a way to focus on those things, and they will be working with me. We met this week about this problem, and I should have several strategies to mitigate this and make it a much better place for everyone to be. But those are the reasons, and this is what we're doing about it.
Okay.
Am I still on? No.
Yes, Betty, you said you had a second part to that?
Yes, I had a second question. Am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. The other question, Barry, maybe you want to answer, but this was voted on a very long time ago. There was, for the past 3 or 4 years, there were exercise classes done regularly at the park, paid for by Ben and East 79th Street Neighborhood Association, because the people at that time preferred to have the ability to stop and rest a minute, and that was very successful. One of the pieces of furniture was dangerous and was recalled by the company. And I meant to mention to Commissioner Castro, I forgot, but when you buy something and it turns out not to be good, it's usually refunded. So now this was a very expensive piece of equipment. I'm sure you know which one it was because I can't remember the name of it. But that was causing problems, and so the manufacturer had it removed. You removed it. But we should get the money back for that. That was one of the things I did want to mention. But the other issue had been voted. More people wanted to have, there is no place, it's a playground. It's called John Jay Park, but it's a playground. And there was no place for people to sit. And so originally it was going to be for seniors. But as the years went by, the Commissioner Silver was right when we talked with him more recently, that it should be open for everyone. It should be open so people can have a place to sit when they go to the pool, and afterwards to have a little place that they can have a picnic. And so the idea was to put in more tables, to keep the chairs the way they are, to make it really look a little bit like a park. All the trees were dying. Some of that equipment, as someone mentioned, will stay, but the large pieces were going to be replaced more by tables, and the surfacing all had to be redone. But there was enough space so that people would be able to do different things and move around. And that was almost 9 years ago that was decided to do, and it's just taken a very long time. But that was the reason. So now I'm just hoping that we'll be able to do that. But I do remember that the people were asking for the furniture and wanted it, and I'm very happy to hear that the Esplanade would like to have it, because I believe there are 4 pieces. There were 5, and now there are 4. And the other part that was there before, that people were going on, those 2 last, I don't know what you call those high places, but that was to remain. So you agree with that, Barry? That was how it was left?
Quite frankly, I don't recall the details, and quite frankly, like to look forward, like to look back. If this furniture can be relocated to the Esplanade, and it meets the needs of the senior population who use that senior equipment, I think it's ideal. So let's move on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to the board members now. Rita.
Hi.
You're good.
I want to just thank Mubin and all the Muslim women of New York who do an incredible job at Rupert Park. I don't have a dog, but I do have grandchildren who do have a dog, and they did come to visit this past weekend, and we only met outside. And my daughter-in-law, who is not afraid of anything, decided to walk the dog in the area where it's the dog area. I never saw Jackie move at the speed of lightning to get out of it. I said, what happened? She said, it is absolutely filled with feces. I am concerned, I can smell it as I go by, but I am concerned during this pandemic that this is not healthy. And is there a way to disinfect it?
All right, so I'll answer that. Well, it has to be picked up. The part of the problem is that a number of the owners of these dogs have not done a responsible job. I'm not saying all of them, I don't know all of them, but I've seen it myself where they ignore the signs, and you're testifying to it that they are not picking up. And it is the law of New York State that you have to pick up after your dog. And many of us remember what it was like years ago before the pooper scooper law. Remember that? When we used to walk down the street and you got your shoes messed by it all the time. I don't know why we stood for it so long, but Ed Lerner saved the day, and the pooper scooper law came into effect. And it's still in effect, as is the park rules and regulations that you have to pick it up. So when we do have dog runs, the dog run group is responsible for cleaning their dog run. And they all seem to do a pretty good job of it. And then they put it in the cans, and then we empty the cans. But we can't ask park workers to go in and clean up other people's dogs' do. And the fact that this is happening is terrible. We will go in and deal with it. And thank you for raising it. But this is just another reason why we can't allow this kind of behavior. So I thank you for that. We will take care of it.
Thank you. It really is a very big problem. And I didn't expect park workers to go in, but some entity, environmental or whatever it is scary, especially during this time when we're all very conscious of health things, and this is permeating in the air. And it really is. I mean, I passed by today and it happened to be a very hot, humid day, and the smell on 2nd Avenue was overwhelming. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rita.
Thank you.
We have Alita Camp next, our chair.
Thank you very much, Tricia and Barry. I just really wanted to thank Councilmember Kalos, Ben, for financing the parks and looking after them, and the Parks Commissioner. One thing we've learned during this virus crisis is how important open space is. So thank you so much, and to the Parks Committee as well. I'm glad that we have the money and the inclination, and also to Mubin and her Muslim group that looks after, I'm sorry, I'm so bad at names, that looks after the park and takes care of it, because I know what Rita's talking about. I walked by on 2nd Avenue and was stunned at what Rupert Park looked like. So I know I called Tricia in a panic from the street as I was walking by. So thank you all so much. That's all.
Thank you.
Great. Alita, I think as much as you can stay, I know you must be exhausted from a million Zoom meetings, but as much as you can stay on, I think that when we get into a little bit deeper conversation about Rupert, it would be great to have your input as to our next steps with that. Next is Craig.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to briefly mention, especially while Abby was online, my concerns regarding the Esplanade and the lack of connectivity that occurs on an almost daily basis as a result of police barricades that have been set up with continuing protests going on near Gracie Mansion. And obviously, I'm a huge supporter of the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement, and I would like to see them continue unimpeded. My concern is that not only are they blocking off East End Avenue during those times, but they're blocking off the Esplanade from the backside of Gracie Mansion all the way to 87th Street. And for anyone who's trying to get from one side to the other or taking advantage of the Esplanade, it becomes a frustrating experience because you have to exit the park and go all the way to York Avenue to be able to come back on the northern side. And there have even been instances where there's been lack of access to the ferry. I know that issue was corrected after numerous complaints, but there was a time, I believe it was last week, where for much of the day, or a good portion of the day, they closed off the 89th Street entrance as well. So anyone who was coming to try to access the ferry north of 87th Street and didn't know would have to go back to York Avenue and come back via 87th Street in order to get around all the closures. So I just want to point that out and see if there is any way that we can have an arrangement so that there's still security provided for Gracie Mansion, but perhaps that it doesn't result in these closures that are inconveniencing people.
Mark, I don't know if you can shed any light on this, but I'll certainly talk with Mark Vaccaro tomorrow, and he's in contact with the Gracie Mansion Police on a regular basis, and we'll find out and get an answer for you.
Great, thank you.
Great. Lowell.
Hi, I want to talk about the funding in parks and the frustration that every community board has across New York City is when we gather funding for jobs in parks, especially, we don't really see, by the time we get design procurement, maybe 4 or 5 years have gone by. And this is a long process, and especially now with the times changing and the funding going down, I like to see everyone take advantage of the design build. Cuomo announced that New York City now on parks projects up to 1.5 can do design build. I haven't seen any come out there, but I know that design build takes shorter time and it's cheaper. And I like to see it with some of the smaller projects, because like a dog run or tree planting, I think there's 6 or 7 people on this phone call that can design and build that. It's not that hard of a reach, but planting a tree right now is between $2,300 and $4,000. The bids are coming in now on an article I read. I'll share it with everybody, but it's an outrageous amount of money that we're paying for tree planting and for a dog run. I believe we should give design build a shot, see if it is better. It's proven to be faster. It's now legal to do, but thanks to Cuomo. And I'd like to see parks take the initiative to do that and make it also inclusive. More minority businesses and workers and women workers, not just the businesses, but the people who live in the city and represent the city, be included in those projects. I do believe design build should be given a shot. I think we can bundle these smaller jobs, these tree planting, like tow trips on city-owned trees or sidewalks. We get a lot of lawsuits from them, and we pay the price, the taxpayer, and they're not getting done fast enough. I think design build is a good option for the small and simple projects. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, let me respond. I'm not an expert on design build, unfortunately. The agency has used that in the past. occasionally, but you're right, we don't use it on a regular basis. And I really want to get back to the committee chairs about this. It's understandable. Everybody is sort of frustrated by the length of time. I was reading August Heckscher's memoirs when he was commissioner of parks under Mayor Lindsay, and it's a great book. And it's like Harry Truman said. The new, I'm going to say this wrong, but the only thing new in the world is the history you don't know. And Heckscher wrote about the same frustration, that it took too long to get capital projects done. And I think he was talking about DeVoe Park in the Bronx, which I know well. But the point is that a lot of the delays are it's not, you're right, it doesn't take a long time to design something per se. It's part of it is the restrictions that the law sets for what must be done to assure an equitable and a proper product. And it's very frustrating, and design build does help shortcut that. I won't bore you with the rest of the details about the capital process, but it's a good question. It's understandable, but the delays under the current system are not because it takes us too long to design something or anything like that. We have actually done a number of things to make things go better. Commissioner Silver has advanced the time frame to make things go more quickly in terms of our internal approvals and the way we organize things, and that's really sped things up. We've also, instead of going the full capital bid out, we've started to do more in-house work in, for example, replacing artificial turf fields, where we're able to do this in some cases, and we do it in a matter of a couple of months, as opposed to like a couple of years when you have to design and build and do all these other things. So we're doing a number of things like that. We're always looking to improve and make things faster. And we have a good record in doing that. But we will look at the design build question, and I'll get back to the co-chairs. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Lowell. I think this is really interesting. Barry, if we have the ability to, I'd love to make sure that that topic is on our September agenda, just so that we don't forget about it, and we can revisit this conversation and see if there are ways to better integrate a more streamlined system.
Duly noted. Thank you.
I think the last person who has this, and then we'll go into a little bit more of a discussion on Rupert, is Mubin.
First, I just want to thank Alita and Rita for their very kind comments. We truly, truly appreciate it. We really couldn't do anything without the collective support of the community on the Upper East Side to help with Rupert Park. I have a question for Commissioner Castro. I know the parks are just beginning to open up, and in this current COVID environment, I'm just wondering that as we are looking at our forward calendar, we currently have planned our fall planting for Rupert Park, which is the big planting in the fall that we do. I'm just wondering, is Parks going to provide all the necessary PPE, et cetera, to make it a safe event for us to invite volunteers and participants to come and work in city parks?
Well, we'll have to sit down and go over that. It's a good question. We have to see what our budget is, because we have taken a hit on the budget, significant budget cut, and we'll make do with what we can do, but I can't promise that at the moment. Let's talk about this next week and see what you have in plan, how many people, et cetera, and then I can give you a good answer.
That sounds fantastic, Commissioner Castro. We'll reach out to your office so we can orchestrate a time to talk and meet.
Very good.
I have a question for the commissioner. Commissioner Castro, we've been talking about the lack of PEP officers that are currently available. Would it be beneficial, would it be prudent to have the community board pass a resolution urging greater funding be made available for PEP officers?
Well, it couldn't hurt, but we're in a real budget situation, and I'm sure the decisions weren't made easily. I think really with PEP, it's park enforcement. I think the city council understands the value of them, and and certainly the administration does. And so they've been built up over the years. When I ran the park enforcement patrol, it was very small. It was like 50. You had like 7 or 8 officers in the borough, and it's really expanded greatly over the last few years. And the mayor has done a great job in helping with that, and as has the council. So right now, we took a big cut with the ranger program, who are not park enforcement. But yes, I mean, if you want to go ahead with a resolution, it can't hurt. And it's always good to hear from the community boards about what they think is important. And you never know when it comes in and saves the day.
Thank you for that direction. I think we should put a resolution on the floor urging the council to provide additional budgeting for the PEP office at this time. Tricia, what do you think?
I think I want to look to the committee and see what the committee says. But generally, I think that sounds good. Are there any? Is there a second? Oh, I see Judy and I see Rita.
Good, thank you.
Any further discussion before we take a vote? Mark, can you? Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Marco's hand for a second, but
I think he was seconding.
Oh, okay. Thank you. If there's not any further discussion, Barry, can you just clarify, are you calling for more PEP enforcement in all of our parks or on Rupert Park or?
Well, no, well, let's speak for Community District 8, greater number of PEP officers dedicated to CB8 or CD8 rather. That's all we can deal with. And we're talking to Ben Kalos and Keith Powers particularly.
Okay.
In brief, we urge the council to make additional funding available to PEP officers in Community District 8.
Great. Okay, I think we'll take a vote then. We will presume that everybody is saying yes unless you raise your hand, and then I'm just going to read it aloud so that I see everybody who's here. So Barry, Alita, Billy, Craig, Elizabeth, Gail, Jack, Judy, Lowell, Marco, Rita, Takako, and Tricia. Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Barry, if you don't mind, I just want to spend a few more moments. We've had a lot of comments about Rupert Park, but I think that we haven't really addressed or fully come to a conclusion on what our next steps are.
Fine.
And so if you don't mind me summing up what I think our general feelings are about this is that we've heard from Councilmember Kalos that there's $500,000 that he's allocated for this space. But in reality, to get those big, meaningful capital changes that we need for this park, going beyond irrigation, but towards overall design and use, we're talking about $6 to $8 million. Barry, you had suggested that we form a 197A committee to accomplish this and to start really targeting larger outreach. I would like to just make sure that nobody else has any additional thoughts or feelings on that piece to it, because what I ideally would like to see is us come together with a proposal or with a plan for what we're going to do next over the summer and move on from there. Yes, Rita.
Tricia, one thing, we don't need a 197A for this. The park exists. Now we need is a subcommittee and a little task force to put their minds together and their hearts together and go out and get the funding from the council, from the assembly, from the Senate, from everybody who wears a hat in Manhattan, including the borough president.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Barry. Rita, go ahead.
What does this committee have to go in with other than a verbal request? Tell us how, certainly, you know, I'm not shy about going in, but I want to know about what is expected when we go in. What do we go in with?
Okay, as you know, the parks will not put a pen to paper on a new design, a new plan until they have the money available. So we can't prepare a design or a plan and peddle that. What we can do is we can sit down and get the best thoughts from the members of the community, from our leaders in the council, and and at parks, particularly from Bill Castro and on, let's get a vision going for what we think this park could be. And maybe we'll do a charrette or something along those lines to at least have a thought that can be visualized, that your money's going to go to this. The idea that the park already exists is fabulous, because Andrew Hazel Green did not exist. It was an old heliport when we went to the various entities to try to get funding for them. Here we have a park. The vision is almost complete. Now we just have to flesh it out.
Sahar?
So am I still muted or?
No, you're very
Sorry.
audible.
You're,
You're audible.
I'm audible. I would like to be on that committee. I live across the street. It's been my park for many years, for 40 some odd years. And you know how hard we work to get the play street. I hope the Muslim women of New York will join us, because they are a very intricate part in this. And I think we should have the committee, if we can have the committee tonight. I'm getting so tired of this is years, and I'm running out of years.
Well, let me suggest this.
Barry, can we
go ahead, please. Go
pause for a
ahead.
second? I want to get Sahar's thoughts on there, and I just want to use my position as co-chair to just suggest that instead of us forming another subcommittee for something, that we try to see if we can't make some actionable steps tonight in our committee as parks, to see if we can take steps forward on this. If we need a separate subcommittee or whatnot, okay, but I would like to first see if we can't. I like what you're saying. So you're saying that we first come up with opportunities to get visions done on what Rupert Park can do. That's something that I think could actually work in a virtual setting. I think that, you know, that's not something that everybody has to be there to do. So I like that idea. I like the idea of gathering together different stakeholders. Speaking of which, we have Sahar, who's next on the line. So maybe Sahar can then speak to what her thoughts are on this. But I think that for us to say tonight that we will start you know, an effort to reach out to these different stakeholders and get these visioning statements in and to get them their input in, I think that that's something that we can do. Sahar?
Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same what you're saying, Tricia, that I think it would be lovely to maybe get, like, you know, have another call where we can maybe all come up with ideas and discuss how we can play a role. So, I mean, it's so lovely that you guys are saying that you will reach out to all these different, you know, the borough president and the council member. He's already, I mean, like, he's so involved. It's amazing. And we have both the amazing council members. But yes, the assembly member, he can be the Dancourt, he can be there. The, you know, the congresswoman, she, like, you know, they can play such a role, and maybe allocate some money at the Rupert Park events. You know, the one I remember, the last October event, Dancourt had mentioned that he would like to be involved. Right, Barry? I mean, I think
exactly that's what propelled this.
Exactly. So having everybody put in some part of it, and then I think also having maybe we can all, and obviously, you know, the Commissioner Castro and Mark and everybody from the parks, they can play a role about the technical details. But we can also have the neighbors involved. Like in us, I'm a neighbor by the way. I live on 78, so I live very nearby. We can also have, you know, like a pool that can be created for Rupert Park, where people chip in and give some resources as well, so that we do have the financial resources. And I'm sure the amount that has been mentioned is not like over 1 year that we need to, like that will need to be come up, or like 2 years, but it's going to be, and I think that's somewhere where Commissioner Castro can mention that over how many years does this kind of money need to be collected, or like would be needed. And again, then maybe having all of us on a call where we have kind of part of it in detail, which parts of the quadrant, how they can be worked, and with various ideas. I think we can all play a role, and we would, as postal volunteers, would definitely like to be involved in this.
Great.
Oh,
I wonder what your feelings are, or others are, on maybe trying to plan some sort of town hall on this that's just dedicated to Rupert Park, and as a kickoff towards this, that really then allows us to invite some of those other elected officials to fully be dedicated to talking about this and getting people's input and that sort of thing.
my immediate reaction is we will have a mob. I think we need to focus our thoughts on this. And when I said a committee, I don't mean 15 people. I mean 4 people, 8 people, 9 people, tops. We could do it by Zoom. We have to do it by Zoom as a public meeting. But I certainly wouldn't make it a public meeting. I would be terrified if we were to have a public meeting. What do you think about Rupert Park? We would be here from one 6:30 meeting until the next 6:30 meeting the following day, and we will still have nothing to show for it. So let us step back. Let's put some of our good minds together. We all have good minds, but let's put them together and come up with a direction. Right now, we thought we have a beginning of a plan. I'd like to speak to Commissioner Castro, as I've had chats with him about this, and he has very strong feelings about getting Rupert Park to the place where it has to be. And I would certainly start with him, and then not being the be end and end all, but at least he will perhaps give us some direction as to how other parks in the city have accomplished what we are trying to do. And I'd like to suggest that we get the names of those folks who think they can be a part of this group within the Parks Committee, and we will put our heads together, we'll put our thoughts together. And if it doesn't work within 2 months, we'll know it doesn't work, and we'll find another format.
Alita?
Thank you. So you have a lot of pieces here, and one big issue that a lot may ride upon is, what about the dogs and the dog park? And that would seem to be something to figure out, is how much, if any, of the park is devoted to the dogs. And I'm wondering, Tricia, you're at Columbia, you have an awful lot of connections up there. If it's worth talking to someone from the school, from the urban planning school, an outside point of view who can look and maybe has some ideas that they'd be willing to share about how to get community buy-in to the idea of what ultimately is done with the dogs, about the dogs, because that is so central to all of this. It just seems like, and I have more of an outside, because I'm not as involved in the parks on a day-to-day basis. And then for the funding, there are a lot of buildings around, a lot of businesses, Zabar. Does he still have the vinegar factory on 91st Street? I don't know. No, gone. Because maybe there's some, not a private-public partnership, but maybe there's some fundraising that could be done with local, although I know the time is really hard right now. But some of the buildings around there whose residents use the park, maybe there's something possible there. But I was just thinking, I know that there's nothing quite like it really close by and near it, and a lot of people use it who can't get to Carl Schurz and with their dogs, or just to go and sit in. And so there are a lot of stakeholders, just outside points of view, and getting all those stakeholders at the table and making sure that you have the right representatives. So if you can reach some kind of idea that there's a buy-in to it, and that's all. Thank you.
Great. all good thoughts. I'm gonna just let Sahar speak. Sorry, I didn't, because she's a member of the public first. Go ahead, Sahar.
So I wanted to ask about the same thing that we have also been hearing about partially from the dog holders, owners, and then ones who don't have one. And, so I was just wondering, is it possible to start with step one, just to determine what needs to be in the park? And obviously it plays a role with everybody, kind of the local community's involvement. So is it possible for community board to maybe send a small form to all the neighbors, and then they fill it up and say, what would they like to see in Rupert Park? I think that would also engage people, because they would feel, hey, this is our park. We are being asked how we want it. And that way, then next step, if their resources, if a fund is formed where people are pooling in their resources, they will feel part, they would feel like they are involved in it, and they would feel interested. And also this would give an exact idea what the neighbors want, right? Does a majority want a dog? Do the majority, they don't want a dog run? And obviously Commissioner Castro can mention the technical aspects and play a big role here, that whether it should even make sense to us. But I just feel like if we can ask, since this is something, a park is something that belongs to the local community, to the people, to the neighbors. So what do they have to say? And for that, if a form can be just sent, a simple form with getting all the details, and start from there. And then step two would be to get everybody involved, to get the resources. And Commissioner Castro can mention, hey, these are the things people want in the park. Maybe people want from the back quadrant, the northeast quadrant, that they want like maybe a tennis court, or maybe they want a basketball hoop place, and make it all have no green, no grass, make it all concrete so that the kids can play on it. People can give ideas and will also feel involved. And then step two would be getting everyone in. I just thought maybe that would help.
Great. I see Mubin, and then I'm going to give Judy a chance to speak because she hasn't spoken yet.
I thank you. All the comments everyone has made has a lot of value and relevance to the issues. Barry, Tricia, I appreciate the fact that I think we need to now move on beyond just conceptualizing to actionable steps. So I'm completely second that. Barry, I 200% agree with you. I think we need a very focused committee at this point in order to achieve what Tricia is saying, have actionable steps. When we did our very first event at Rupert Park, we invited all the elected officials, and a lot of people asked us, you're a volunteer group, you're coming here to plant, why are you calling these elected officials? And we felt that all the stakeholders, whether it was assembly member, borough president, congresswoman, they all needed to be there, because we're all trying to fix a problem that affects everyone at some level. And I just wanted to mention that in the past, Sahar alluded to it, Dan Quartz, assembly member, borough president, they've all actually verbally told us that if we move in that direction, they would be supportive. So that I just wanted to put it out there. So that's at least a positive that we have in the past. We've also had a lot of conversation with Commissioner Castro about the dog run issue. And I don't want to belabor that point. He had some very valid concerns, considerations. So I agree with Barry that we need to, start there and figure out what is truly feasible before we even poll neighbors, I think. What is feasible, sustainable, and then actually get down to brass tacks and have, 2 or 3 very concrete action steps that we can all work on. Otherwise, it's a lot of wonderful conversation. We all have our hearts in the right place, but we really want to be able to deliver to the neighbors, some development, some improvement in that direction.
Great. Thank you. Judy.
I will ask, can you hear me? My computer died, so okay.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question for Commissioner Castro and then a comment. Commissioner Castro, is it Parks who is going to ultimately decide whether there is or is not going to be a dog run in Rupert Park? And if so, could we have that decision sooner rather than later?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Is your question, could you just restate it again? Judy?
Are you being Parks, the one to decide whether we're going to have a dog run in Rupert Park or not? Is that a Parks Department decision?
It is. I mean, we go through the community board to get their recommendation whenever people want to put in a dog run, and it works very well. So I like to hear from the community board first as to whether they think it makes sense or not. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it if they say they want it, or not do it if they say they don't want it, but it's taken seriously. The thing I want to avoid is to do something that the community doesn't want. And so I listen to the community a lot about dog runs, but you know, I reserve the right to overrule it, although I don't generally do that. It's not a wise way of proceeding. But if I feel that, you know, there's a reason one way or the other, then I'll go that way. But so that's my answer on that. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it is. And now my general comment, and this is based on our doing the new parks through the 197A, and from how I've seen the Parks Department function over the years. Normally, when there's planning for a new park, and Commissioner Castro correct me if I'm wrong, the Parks Department has meetings with the community. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever is needed in the planning stages, and then they come back and they bring a plan to us for our approval and discussion and maybe redesign, etc. So I think a small committee, maybe to put some ideas together, is good, but I think we should let the Parks Department do their job. But what we can be doing now is asking our elected officials for money, because Steve Simon gave us a price for between $6 and $8 million to redo this park. So no matter what the design is, we kind of have a price range for what we have to start raising. So while a small group may be talking about what they desire to see there, I think the community board chairs, the parks chairs, or the committee can put a letter together and write to all of our electeds, asking them to support this project and please give funds. Understand that when we ask for the funds go directly to the Parks Department. They do not come to the community board, and they're designated for Rupert Park. And I think it's not too soon to start that. We should start doing that as soon as possible.
Respectfully,
trying to work out the plan.
I think, though, I mean, we can continue to discuss this. Judy, my reservation with us doing that is that I don't necessarily like asking for money when I don't know what it's going for exactly. I can broadly say what I would like for it to go to, but I don't know if I'm asking for money for more plantings. I don't know if I'm asking money to level the whole thing. To Sahara's point, I don't know if I'm asking money for a bunch of concrete and take away all the plantings so that there's nothing for the dogs to ruin. So I personally think I'm more err on the side of trying to get a more comprehensive understanding of where the broader community what the broader community wants to see for this space in the future before I start to, because I guess I just don't see how can justify saying give me $8 million without a more concrete proposal in place of what I know that should go to. But that's me. I'll let Rita go.
For years, Mark Vaccaro has been saying you can't have a dog run because of the incline of the park. Now, has that changed? I mean, if it would be impossible because of the topography of the park to have a dog run, we shouldn't really ask the public if they want one, if we know that they can't have it. So that's number one. And number two is that if you ask, we used to have a saying in advertising that a camel is a horse designed by committee. And you ask 100 people and you get 125 answers. And we should ask them. But I think one of the things that we should do, there are parks around the city that were not designed by the Parks Department, but were instrumental in building. And I think that we need to do that. I need to do homework. I feel like I'm assuming that I will be on this committee because, I don't know, it's my park. That we show what we can have, but we should know definitively what we can't have because of the acute angle of the park. This is like no other park in the city that I know of. I mean, I'm sure in the Bronx or someplace else. So, Mark, what do you say?
I was commenting on the current structure of the park. If it's sloped, it's going to erode. And if it's going to erode, the dogs are going to increase the speed of the erosion. I mean, I'm not making any fancy claims.
Yeah, thank you. But, so therefore, if we have this, so why are we, like saying, do you want a dog run? And then we don't give it to them because you can't give it to them. If I go along with Barry and Trisha and Judy that we really need to start. We've been talking about starting for so many years and we haven't started. It's a hard time to start, both financially and pandemically, but we need to start. And to start to see, I think that one of the things to do is to go around to some of the parks in Manhattan, because I don't see going to Staten Island to look at a park. But let's go around Manhattan. Battery Park has parks that would more have a European flavor. This park was a disaster from the beginning. So I think that we really need to go around, take some pictures of parks, and then come back and say, what do we like?
Right.
Not in an imagination. This exists. You can have this. You could take one from column A, you could take one from column B, but they exist. It's just my suggestion.
I agree with you, and I'd like to make a proposal for next steps. I'd like us to, and Aaliyah, tell me if we can even do this, or Will, if we can even do this. But I'd like us to have to use August and September to envision what this park can be, and to solicit our community members for feedback on it. We can do it through email. We can ask them for input. We can Barry to avoid a 3-day long meeting. We can invite people to send in their comments as like a prolonged period, and then come back in September with, as Rita had said, pictures and ideas and feedback from various stakeholders, and look at it all together and say, and just pretty much weigh it out and see what people have said. I think that we can't do it without the broader community's input in this. And so I would like to suggest that we use August and September to solicit people. We could get a survey out of some kind. We could ask the Muslim Volunteers for New York to reach out to their list too, for whoever is around, and just try the best we can to get as much community input as possible in this, not in a one meeting, not in a one town hall standpoint, but in a prolonged way where people can send us feedback. And then we come together in September in a separate meeting led by whatever small subcommittee wants to lead it, to discuss this vision and to then discuss how we go about advocating for the pieces that are most common and that have most common ground. What do you all say about that? And I'm sorry, I guess Alita raised her hand to respond to my question of if it's even feasible.
Thank you. I think it's feasible. I think you need to get as much community input as you can. So August is problematic. A lot of people, well, traditionally were away, but with the advent of Zoom, that shouldn't matter. I think if you're going to look at and I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, the dogs, and if it's not, and you need to have the parameters, as Rita pointed out, of what is impossible or what's not ideal, because if people are all talking about how it should be 90% a dog park and that can't be done, then you have to be able to deal with it. So maybe part of it is to see whether there is another, and I don't know that there is another location for a dog run that is, or a dog park that is nearby that becomes an alternative to make maybe Rupert Park workable. So you have to think, I mean, there are a lot of alternatives, and it's best to come, I think, yeah, people may go away and come back with a brilliant idea or ideas, but in the meantime, you need to figure out what is possible, what isn't possible, and what and just some different ways of looking at it for the community to be able to respond, because you need buy-in. Obviously, what is there isn't working. So
Excuse me.
there needs to be.
I'm sorry, I have to cut in. There's an emergency I have to deal with at Parks, so I have to get off the phone. I'll try to call back in a few minutes if I'm able to resolve it. Okay?
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I didn't say anything wrong. But so that's just, I'm sorry, Tricia, for taking up so much time. That's just what I would suggest is to, yes, you should have the meeting in August. There's no reason that you can't. The full board doesn't meet, but there's no reason Landmarks meets, Streetlight meets. There's no reason that you couldn't do this. So, and then come back.
I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't proposing meeting in August. I was just proposing using August as an opportunity to do some virtual outreach to ask them for their input. And if that goes into September, I think that also is fine too. I was just suggesting that we take some sort of action now and through the summer, and we don't wait until September. We could draft an email, create a survey, just solicit, somehow reach out to folks in one of our blasts and solicit feedback from them now on what they think could be done.
Tricia, there is a model. Go ahead, Talita. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Barry. I'll just finish and then stop. We did a survey, as Barry knows, for our small business program outreach, and we asked people for their priorities in various categories, and that's how we determined our program. So that's a way to go, is to have categories and then ask people within those categories what their various priorities are, and that gives you an idea of how to approach it. So I think you're good to go in August, and I think having that information for September, when everyone's all geared up again, is a great idea.
Alita, there's a reason you're the chair of the board. You read minds. You knew exactly what I was going to say, because we do have the model. Will has the Google Doc or whatever it is he put together. So the format is there. All we have to do is plug in our priceless thoughts. With that thought, I see it's 8:15. I said we'd be wrap this up at 7:15. Once again, about an hour late, but $1 short. In any event, I'd like to move the agenda unless it's a very serious problem. Rita, you have a problem? I have a question rather. Would you want to mute Rita, please?
We live in very strange times, so I'd like to put out an idea. There is a parks committee in each of the community boards in the city. if we could ask them to take a picture of the parks that are in their area and send it in to us, to Will, and so that we could put it up almost like wallpaper and do it as a process of elimination. The reason I say this is because of mass transportation, that we don't really want to put a lot of people on mass transportation during this time. So I don't know how you feel about that, but at least we could get the ball rolling, is to find out what exists on the island of Manhattan.
I'll save you 12 stamps, Rita. The Parks Committee, I bet, has a picture of each of the parks in Community District 8 and in the citywide. Rather than going to 12 different boards, we just call Mark and say, Mark, get us the pictures. We need them tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock.
Question, does that also
speak in English.
does that
No, or we can go on the parks website and find the
I was
image.
gonna say, the parks website does have pictures of almost every park.
Yes.
Yeah, every park that they did, or what about parks that they did not do?
But if they're responsible, if it's in the city's parks inventory, then they have a photograph of it.
But if
like Rupert Park.
So we got, that's a start.
Yeah, so let's do this. Can you just let us know if anybody on the committee or anybody who's at this meeting would like to be part of a small subgroup? We can create that before August recess. Barry and I will work together on creating a survey that will go out to the broad community, asking for their thoughts on Rupert Park and what they think a large redesign would look like, and what it should have, and how it can meet the needs of the most stakeholders. We'll share those. And then in September, we will hold both a subcommittee meeting and a Parks Committee meeting to have the subcommittee work on looking at those pictures that Rita had said, and looking at these designs and looking at the feedback that came in, and then we'll address it at our September meeting as well.
Very good. Move the agenda. Okay. If I may interrupt, rather than discuss the rules in Central Park, which is on the agenda, which I don't even know what the hell it means, even though I am co-chair of this committee, let us put that off for another time. And let us go to Mark Vaccaro. Mark, have you any updates for us on the status of Parks and Community District 8?
As you all are pretty much aware, we're opening everything we can at this stage of the game. We have a fair number. I was trying to find out before the meeting, but if there were any basketball hoops left to be put up, as you may guess, there's literally thousands of basketball boards and hoops in the borough, and we have like 6 guys putting them up. So, but we got a fair number done in District 8. I think we're pretty close to being finished, because I believe Carl Schurz, John Jay, I think Seabury was done. But if not, Friday by Monday, my guess would be by the end of business on Monday, we'll pretty much have all the basketball hoops up. We'll have all of the playgrounds open. There's no volleyball here. Barry closed the bocce court. So that's in terms of the playgrounds. In terms of the Esplanade, in the near future, we're going to have to close off another section of the Esplanade completely. This is all depending on what the engineers tell us, but an 80-year-old piece of infrastructure that hasn't been taken care of is not in the best of shape. So that's a possibility coming forward. I know the engineers are doing some surveys. There is some preliminary work, by consultants on some of the maybe forthcoming contracts on the Esplanade. But as we all are aware, that's expensive stuff that takes a long time. I think that's the biggest news, is that we're trying, by we, I mean Parks is really trying to get some of these bigger, you know, more structural, more important jobs onto the plate before they get chopped. You know, that's
Mark,
just my opinion.
can you clarify what piece of the Esplanade are you thinking about? You guys would close down or shut off access?
Yeah, well, we just closed off a section 76 to 77th near John Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anybody who's been running there, and all of you who is complaining, complain to Wes, not me, please. Anyway, they're going to take another look at that section because that's really bad, you know, that section. So
And that section wasn't actually funded in the next round of funding that we had.
no, that was not funded at all.
Right.
So, you know, so I don't know what kind of time window that would be. I know the Capitol's been pretty good about trying to move funding around for different emergency sections, but that's what they do, you know, not what I do. So I don't know what that status is, and you know how much priority is going to be given to it if it does happen.
Okay. This is, I just want to say, Barry, and I know you want to move this along, but we have to just talk about Central Park for a second because I think Elizabeth Ashby was waiting to hear about Central Park.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that this is extremely frustrating because I sat in person listening to Parks talk about what was funded not 6 months ago, and I said that it was bad that we didn't fund 76 to 78th Street, and I said it, and I said it even in our full board meeting. I told the committee in the full board meeting, we need to advocate for this. This is not good that this isn't funded. This is in bad repair then. And to hear, and I do use the Esplanade, so I've seen it just disintegrate in the last 3 to 4 months, and I've seen more of that yellow tape haphazardly wrapped around our benches over there, and I know exactly that it's bad, but you know, I really urge this committee to think about ways that we can more strongly advocate for funding on this. We saw this coming. We saw this coming 6 months ago. It's happening now, and now I just want to say, with budget cuts the way they are, it's extremely concerning to just hear that we're going to close it and we don't know when it's going to get fixed, and we don't know how we're going to shift money, and there's a lot of priorities. So I would urge this committee to think about ways that we can bring this to the attention of our elected officials again, and those who are the decision makers on this, because I feel like I'm saying the same things over again, except in a different light. But this is already a bad situation. It's just going to get worse without fixing it immediately.
Yeah, from you know, I've been doing the Esplanade for quite a bit, and what I've noticed is that, you know, you can have a section that's listed as moderate, and that for whatever reason, you know, the next time the divers and the survey crews go, suddenly it's extreme. Or you can have a section that's severe and it stays that way forever, and then you have another section that's severe that suddenly, for whatever reason, goes to, you know, extreme. You know, so you know, we had to close that section off that's above your community board, but we had to close off like an entire, not close it off completely, but take a big chunk out of the runway, you know, the sidewalk and bike path up in the 100 and 101st. And that section was supposed to be one of the better ones. You just can't tell. I mean, that's why they're constantly sending the engineers out and the divers out, you know, in the boats.
I see 2 hands. I don't know if these are just left up from before. Mubin or Alita, do you have anything that you want to comment on?
Trisha, I think I kind of just wanted to second what Alita said. I love your idea for what to do in August and September. The only thing is, I again would reiterate, we've had so many conversations with New York City Parks where they've talked about the almost impossibility of having a dog run there. So I would only just say, before Barry and you figure out how to frame the survey, that you might want to, you know, see what is truly even doable. You know, we can send all the photographs, but you might get a million iterations of what people want. And I think it will be easier to have a narrowed down survey where people have a focused option on what to choose, what is actually also sustainable and doable. Because we've had so many conversations with so many constituents and always to be told that the dog run is not a feasible option.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to put it out there. But other than that, again, thank you for keeping parks as a primary consideration of your work. And we really appreciate it as neighbors and New Yorkers.
Great. Alita, did you want to say something?
I did. This is for Mark. I don't understand the basketball courts and how they're opening. There are so many cases of the virus. Delaware, which is not very far away, is one of the new states that's been shut out of New York. I don't understand. Singing is a problem because people are exhaling to such a great degree. And at basketball, they're not going to want to wear masks. It's hot and people are sweaty. Moisture affects the transmission of the virus. I really just would like an explanation of how basketball courts are open at a time then that this virus is surging around the country.
I don't make those decisions. Basically, my understanding is that the mayor's office, and he has a COVID task force on opening and closing. They make those decisions, and then they talk to parks about, possibility of when to do what, and then it goes back to the mayor's office, and they decide. So they decided that at phase 3 we could open the basketball courts. So we're opening the basketball courts. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm not a epidemiologist.
No, I know that, but I thought you might be able to have some clues as to how it can be a safe activity. But I appreciate that you're not making the decision.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mark, unless you have other comments or updates.
I would like to go.
I know, I appreciate that. Barry, I just wanted to remind you, so the Central Park thing came up in 2 pieces, and we can be very brief with this. I don't honestly know if Elizabeth is still on, but Elizabeth had brought up the adherence to rules, particularly as it pertains to bikes. So
May I jump in, Tricia? Because I spoke with Ed Pinkar, the DOT commissioner, who's on paternity leave, but he did respond to me. And I spoke with Captain Bill Gallagher, the commanding officer of the Central Park precinct, on those 2 issues that Elizabeth had. And I have my report right here.
Perfect.
Elizabeth, I'm going to read this because that's the way it's written. Elizabeth Ashby, community board member, had brought up 2 items regarding Central Park. Traffic signals not being ADA accessible, meaning when people in wheelchairs came up to try to push the button on the light to change the signal from go to stop, they could not, in her opinion, could not reach the button. And also, she also suggested that maybe get rid of those buttons altogether and use the old system where traffic stopped regularly at intervals. Okay. And she also was concerned about enforcing bicycle rules both on the paths and in the transverses. So here's what we got. I referred this 2 items to the Parks Department DOT for traffic enforcement and to the Central Park precinct. Ed Pinkar, Manhattan DOT commissioner, replied that although he is still on paternity leave, DOT is speaking with Parks and Central Park Conservancy about the operation of the loop roads, including the potential for a larger study of overall signals infrastructure. COVID-19 has interrupted those conversations, but he expects that they will resume later this summer. Captain William Gallagher, commanding officer of the Central Park precinct, called to report that with the current increase in violent crimes and the recent shooting in Central Park, there's a murder which he was on the scene when it occurred. He has resources stretched thin. He will address our issues of bicycles in the park when things are more under control, and he is looking forward to attending our next person-to-person meeting regarding parks, when he can come and bring to us his ideas on the problems today. That's pretty much what Elizabeth had to offer, and those are responses we have. I'll share those with Elizabeth. She has those reports. The other item I'd like to bring to your attention that it was mentioned earlier that some 500 people have signed petitions to have the pool at John Jay Park open. I'd like to suggest while we could pass a resolution and that would be acted on by the committee, the full board next Wednesday and go out, if the resolution was passed, go out next week. I think if we ask if it's a consensus of the board members to ask the board chair to write a letter to the Parks Department suggesting that they consider reopening the pool at John Jay Park, we might facilitate that process. What is your opinion? Raise your hand if you have an opinion.
Yeah, Barry, you have a couple of members of the public who all want to speak.
I will say Catherine is the one who put together the petition. So if you want.
Fine, let her go.
Hi, everyone. This is Kate Corkery, and with my little grassroots efforts of the last, in 6 days and about 25 hours, I have collected over 523 signatures from the local residents. I live on East 78th Street. I'm a homeowner in the Cherokee building. I have lived down this block for 29 years, and I have swam at John Jay Pool for the same amount of time. Not only myself, but this is a neighborhood full of a lot of love for that pool and that park. I've listened to everything that you've had to say about the equipment and the dogs and everything else, and I am all for it. I can't do anything, unfortunately, about the budget being cut for the 53 pools in the city. And last week when they announced that 15 pools would be opening up, just 4 in Manhattan, I would never take anything away from any other pool that's been given the checklist to open up. But as has been discussed, no one really wants to travel that far. Governor Cuomo did go ahead and open up all the state pools with very strict regulations on how they were to operate. I would assume that the city would follow the same course of action with regards to that. With the 500 signatures, I've had doctors and nurses and moms and dads and policemen and park supervisors and quite a few senior citizens sign this petition. This little neighborhood is very old and very young. There's a lot of moms. I feel like I know all of them right now. I'm going to the park every single day with their children. And I feel it very unfortunate that the park's budget was cut so much because I think more now than ever, we need our outdoor space. We need to be walking around and getting some exercise. I can hear everything that was said about the parks and how much everyone enjoys them. I just really hope that something can be done, not just for just John Jay. I hope someone else has another grassroots effort going on at their local pool, because those pools, everyone's pool, I think, in the city, if they live in a nice little neighborhood, wherever that is, in whatever borough, I think everyone has their summer friends and it's their summertime.
Kathy, can I ask you to wrap it up, please?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a lot of people looking to chime in. Sahar, very briefly, please.
I just wanted to say, yes, we will send out the details. We can do that. We'll reach out to our board and discuss this further with them. What you, like your email, just to kind of support you in getting more information from the neighbors. But I also had an idea that our town, the local newspaper, if you want to just mention on that, in that as well, because they are also a stakeholder, right? Like they're also involved. Then that would be another way of reaching more people in the neighborhood.
You talking about the? Are you talking about the open? Are you talking about opening the pool?
No, nothing. I'm talking about Rupert Park.
We've moved on. We're not talking about the pool, please.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Jordan.
Hi. I've mentioned to several of you that when they put up the new pedestrian crossing signal and the controls on the east side, they positioned the giant control box so that it blocks the button. I sent Will an image. May we share it? Is that okay? Thank you. I am now looking sort of toward Fifth Avenue, and the box is number 7, and you can see the button, but the people who are approaching it have no idea that there's a button. And in fact, when you turn right to cross the road, you have the same problem. It's ubiquitous on all of the new installations. The box is too low or it's on the wrong post. I don't want to do any more with this now, but I hope that some of the members of the board would be willing to explore the park, happy to do it with you, and see if you agree that they're hidden. Thank you so much.
Gordon, I'll send that tonight to the commissioner of DOT commissioner and the Conservancy, and I'll send it to Captain Gallagher. Maybe he can shoot it down with a gun. I don't know, but we'll address that this evening. I have that. I'll get that photo from Will. You're welcome. Judy Schneider.
I was just saying I second the resolution for Alita to write the letter.
Thank you. Craig.
Hi, since I hadn't seen the petition, I was just curious if it included any stipulations regarding social distancing and other public health measures that are in place right now. I guess I would love to see pools reopen. I'm just a little unsure as to how it can work in terms of making sure that, I know the pool gets crowded. I used to live on that block. Making sure that people are able to remain safe and that tensions don't ever rise if people are forced to wait on long lines to get in the limited space that is John Jay Park.
I'll suggest to Alita that she include that in the letter she sends if we agree to send the letter. Thank you. Barbara Rutter. Barbara?
Barbara, you muted yourself back again. Try that one more time.
Okay.
There you go.
There you
okay, thanks. I kept clicking. I'm just very worried about it. I understand Alita being worried about basketball. I can't imagine how this could be anything but the most dangerous thing. Is there a plan of how to do it, that you come by reservation, that you only stay a few minutes, that you, I can't, in ordinary days, it's very crowded. And if a limited number of pools are going to be open, people will travel to come here. That will make it that much more crowded. What about the bathhouse? What if people need to use the bathroom? We do hear that toilets are a source of COVID, of danger. And I don't know if we're asking for trouble in our area.
Can I just respond?
Yes, please.
Sure, please do. Convince me.
I won't try to convince you, Barbara. I know better than that. What I want to just say is that Barry and I have had many conversations about not making a statement on public health issues. We have both felt very strongly that it's not our place to urge when, for example, when the playgrounds were still closed, people told us you should call on the Parks Department to open up the playgrounds. And we said that when it comes to a matter of public health, that we had to trust the people who were in charge and making those decisions, because we did not feel equipped to do so. This feels different, and I applaud Kate and what she's done with gathering signatures. The powers that be have already decided to open up pools. They have already done so. They are doing so in a way that they feel is safe. And so this is not a statement of you should do something that hasn't been done because of public health. This is you are doing this in some areas, you are deciding to allocate your limited budget in some ways, and unfortunately our community was left out of that. And so in my mind, this is not a question of public health, this is a question of equity in our community, and making sure that that the families and individuals who use our pools have the same opportunity to do so this summer. And just, this is us advocating for a piece of the pie. In my general opinion, I wholeheartedly agree that if we were to send a letter out, and it wouldn't be a resolution because we didn't post about it because it came to us later on. If we did send a letter, I would absolutely encourage us to put in language, or ask Alita to put in language to make sure that all safety precautions are in place. Everything was in accordance with the CDC. Everything was in accordance with what the other pools are doing. So this was not, in my mind at least, and from my perspective, it's not a public health matter that we're taking consideration of. It's a piece of the budget that we're advocating for.
What she said.
Barbara, I can't see what you're saying. I can't hear what you're saying. But
I said what you said.
Oh, good. I was talking to Barbara Rudder.
Oh.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You are.
Okay, I guess we'll mute me. I said, as always, you have convinced me. Nervously, but you've convinced me, Tricia.
Good.
So I guess I don't think we need to. I don't know if we take a vote or not to decide on the pool matter, or if it's just something that Alita is able to do. I'm not sure if Alita is still with us on the line. I think she had to leave.
She did have to leave.
Oh, good. Well, let's make her do it then. No. Let's suggest that unless there's very strong opposition among the board members, I'm going to suggest to Alita, I'll send her an email when we get done with this, that it was a sense of the board members that she write a letter using the beautiful language that Tricia did, that it's equitable to consider opening John Jay Pool rather.
And can I just, Barry, I don't know if we have other pieces to discuss.
I do not. That's what the word adjourned is coming to mind.
I know, but give me 2 seconds here. 2 minutes, I promise. I just want to say to Kate that I think it's great what you've been doing and the advocacy you're doing. And I think it's wonderful to have another community member join participate in the community board process. So I hope that you'll come back as somebody who lives and uses John Jay and come and be a regular attendee at our meetings. And I think it's wonderful that you're here. I wanted to just mention one other thing. And this was something that when we talked about Central Park, it happened about a month or two ago. So it obviously the world just spins so quickly now that people forget. But part of the reason why I had asked Barry to bring up rules on John Jay was about the Amy Cooper situation in the park, and adherence to the rules there, and making sure that we knew the rules in the ramble, and just general just racial justice things too in that park. And so Barry had dutifully confirmed with the Central Park folks that, and as I'm sure you've read in the news a million times at this point, that no dogs are off leash in the ramble, and really if you talk to neighbors, I just hope that as good park advocates, you would remind everybody of the rules and try to make sure that space is preserved in the way it should be. And I guess I just wanted to say that I'm going to talk to Barry about this more, but as we move forward as a committee, I would love to think about equity in all senses of the word, and this committee and what we can do with that. So I would hope that in August, as you all take some time and hopefully have some peaceful respite from the craziness that is going on everywhere, that you might also take some time to consider what that means to this committee. I know I would certainly like to hear your thoughts on it. And I think that it all comes back. I think that Rupert Park and the Esplanade, and the fact that the Esplanade connects three or more different communities with very different populations of people that use it, and there's a lot there. So I think that just if you might afford me some time during August to think on this and to come back, maybe we can talk about this a little deeper in September and the fall.
Good.
I took 3 minutes, Barry.
Very good. Thank you, dear. That having been said, I'd like to suggest that we adjourn this evening. I wish you all a very peaceful, happy, productive August, and we'll see you back here in September, all God willing. You stay well, stay safe. Good night.
Right.
All right. Good night. Be safe.